Cool, this is Dr. E, and today we're going to be covering two topics, 8.5 eutrophication, 8.6 on thermal pollution. 8.5 is where we need to explain the environmental effects of too much fertilizers or detergents on aquatic systems. There's 5 subsections underneath there, 5 essential knowledges. FRQ we'll be asking how to explain environmental concepts and process using visual means. So what's eutrophication? Because they're limiting nutrients in aquatic systems, any extra input of nitrogen and phosphorus will lead to eutrophication, which fuels algae growth, as you can see off to the left. Algae bloom covers the surface of the water, blocking sunlight and killing plants below the surface. Eventually, the algae is going to die off because they run out of nitrogen and phosphorus. Then bacteria will break down the dead algae and other plants using up oxygen in the water because decomposition is aerobic. The lower oxygen levels kill additional organisms, plants, animals, fish, because the bacteria use up even more oxygen to decompose the dead aquatic animals. This creates a positive feedback loop where less oxygen means more dead organisms, more bacteria decomposition, less oxygen, more dead organisms, and so forth. And so basically what happens through time is that due to rain bringing in nutrients from around, the excess nutrients such as fertilizers or just dead organisms are flushed into the river or into the lake. Then the plants are going nuts because they have nitrogen and phosphorus, which is going to help them grow. And it's going to also cause algae to grow, duckweed, and other plants. Eventually, the algae blooms and oxygen is depleted. Why? Because the oxygen bloom is going to prevent sunlight from reaching other plants. Once the plants die, oxygen is going to be depleted because decomposition depletes the oxygen. Not just with no more photosynthesis, but bacteria are decomposers. They're going to use up more oxygen, and eventually the whole ecosystem is going to die. Cultural eutrophication is man-made, where for whatever reason we have nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, either from additional fertilizer on land or maybe cattle manure going down into the water. This leads to eutrophication. The algae bloom due to the increase in nitrogen and phosphorus means there's less sunlight, which means the plants below the surface die. Bacteria use up the oxygen for decomposition because it's an aerobic process. Hypoxia or low oxygen occurs, and there's going to be dead zones where there's no fish. One of the places where this occurs will be water treatment plants such as freshwater or sewage treatment or runoff from livestock. Major sources would be discharge from sewage or treatment plants, such as human waste and phosphates and soaps and detergents. Animal waste from agriculture, synthetic fertilizer put on agricultural fields and lawns. So oligotrophic waterways, not eutrophic, but oligo means waterways with low nitrogen and phosphorus levels. They have stable algae population and high amount of dissolved oxygen. That would be the top one up here. This can be because there's not a lot of nutrients. For example, up in the northern part of Minnesota or a new lake, it's going to have not a lot of nutrients because it's a young lake. These are the clear ones where you can actually come close to seeing the bottom. Aquatic systems undergo succession, just like ecosystems on land undergo succession. There's sediment buildup on the bottom. There's going to be because there's more sediment on the bottom in the bathyc zone, there's going to be higher levels of nutrients in the lake. Over time, the ponds will build up more and more, shifting from oligotrophic to mesotrophic, which means a little bit, to eutrophic, where you can't see down. Eventually dissolved, if there's not enough dissolved oxygen, it's going to lead to dead zones. If there's a decrease in dissolved oxygen, this is causing a dead zone. And so basically due to the nutrients coming in, heat going in, there's going to be a lack of oxygen, just like what we talked before. All aquatic life requires dissolved oxygen for respiration. As the dissolved oxygen decreases, fewer species can be supported. Most fish require at least 3 parts per million to survive, 6 parts per million to reproduce. And you can see here, above here, 4 or more is required for it to spawning, growth, and fish populations. Below 4, it's going to die out. So question FRQ for 8.5. You can see here, 3 and below is going from orange to red. Going above is going from yellow to green. Make a claim about which state's fishing industry, Louisiana or Texas, likely have a lower average profits in the summer of 2011. Thank you. Justify this claim with evidence from the map. 8.6, thermal pollution. Here we're going to describe the effects of thermal pollution on aquatic ecosystems. 2 pieces of essential knowledge will be gained, and you're going to be explaining environmental concepts in applied contexts. So, solubility of oxygen. Ability of solids, liquids, or gas to dissolve into liquid is known as the solubility. It's an inverse relationship with air between water temperature and oxygen solubility. As the temperature goes up, dissolved oxygen goes down. Why? Because the water molecules are going faster and faster, which means the oxygen is going faster and faster and can leave or is pushed out. We can see that with a chart. As the temperature goes up towards 35, dissolved oxygen goes down. Thermal pollution is when heat is released into the water and has a negative effect on the organisms. Why? Because there's less oxygen. Heat increases the respiration, make them, because they're hotter, and therefore they have to get rid of extra carbon dioxide. Also, the hot water has less oxygen. This can lead to suffocation without enough oxygen to support respiration. Sources of thermal pollution. Power plants use cool water from the surface or groundwater to cool the steam. So remember, you heat up the water, it goes and turns a turbine, which turns a generator. Well, that then has to cool off before it can be used again. Well, they have cooling towers to cool off the water, and that cooling towers warm up the water that eventually goes someplace else. And so we have cool water going in, goes in, cools off the water here, but the extra heat is pushed out back into the ocean. Steel mills, paper mills, other manufacturing plants also use cool water to cool down machinery and return the warm water to the local surface waters. Urban stormwater runoff can also cause thermal pollution due to heat from blacktop or asphalt. Okay. Nuclear power plants require especially large amounts of cool water to cool steam back into water and cool the reactor core. And always when you go by a nuclear, there's tons and tons of steam going up out of it. Now, there are ways to cool it. There's something called a cooling tower. And cooling towers or ponds are used to cool steam back into water, to hold warm water before returning it to the local surface water. So already here, what happens is it's sprayed. The hot water goes in here, is sprayed down. Fan is pulling it out, and when that happens, the steam is going to be turned from liquid into gas. When that happens, it steals a lot of the energy from the surrounding liquefied water because it's going to gas, which cools off that water. Standard nuclear power plants can be optimized to cool better and hold the water longer before returning it to the nearby surface. So, practice FRQ 8.6. Can you explain how an increase in nuclear power generation in a town may lead to a decrease in biodiversity in nearby aquatic ecosystems? Thank you, and I hope that was helpful.